Following Rick's departure, a 6-year time skip solidifies the show's shift into a new era. Just as the story reintroduces us to the new world, the music has an opportunity to develop some new themes and textures for this point in time. One example is a small motif given to the Kingdom community, which is mainly used to establish their scenes and build hope for the fair as it's being prepared for. We also get a nice melody for 2 key scenes between Michonne and Judith. It's a touching piece of music and pulls you into their relationship as they engage in meaningful, if not pivotal conversations about what's really important in the midst of the chaos being thrown at them. Of course, this era of the show introduces us to a new group of enemies, the Whisperers, a group shrouded in mystery as they hide amongst the dead. They are given a very distinct and creepy theme, which allows for a lot of variation. The biggest expansions to the theme come in Season 10, but even here it can play as either a solo harp for a creepier, mysterious sounding melody, right up to a much stronger statement if the Whisperers are out in the open, making a bold confrontation. There's also a subtly related version given to Lydia, whose intentions and fate are left quite uncertain for a long time. This shows up in a lot of her interactions with Henry, hinting at a potential sinister side to their relationship. It's different to where the story ends up going, but sows the appropriate seeds of doubt that Daryl and the rest of the group feel towards Lydia before she becomes a part of the community. It could also represent her departure from the Whisperers' ideology, as it resembles their main theme, but with some off notes distorting it. The penultimate episode of Season 9 brings us one of the most significant musical moments of the series, as we lose a lot of our main characters in one moment. The reveal of who Alpha's killed behind everyone's backs has been built up to with an underlying sense of dread throughout the whole episode, and it's a scene comic readers have been anticipating for years. As the scene unfolds, and we're shown the heads one at a time, the music is constantly rising, with the drum hits punctuating each reveal. The music doesn't let you go. With each reveal, it continues to rise, promising that there's more to come. As the characters we're shown get more and more significant, the music continues to raise tension, right up until the biggest reveal right at the end, when we see Henry's head on the final spike. No! Here, the focus shifts to a more intimate feel, bringing the attention to Carol, as the reality of what just happened starts to sink in. Now, as the camera pans out, it feels like this could be the end of the episode. However, what comes next is what really sets this one apart, both musically and as an episode, to make this my favourite episode from the show. Sadiq, the sole survivor from the group Alpha kidnapped, tells the group what happened. But while Alpha let him go in hopes that he would spread fear and division amongst the community, Sadiq chooses to focus on the story of hope that can be found in the situation.
See, before the end, they gave us an opening and everyone fought back. They fought like hell. They defended each other. And they sacrificed for each other. And some of them, they didn't even know each other, but they still fought like they did
The music here still resembles the same melody as before, but turns much more hopeful and inspiring. It doesn't disregard the tragedy of the situation to try and make the scene happy. It's still a very emotional score, but it finds a way to turn the tone towards hope, while still maintaining the sadness and importance. It allows us to process the loss with a more hopeful outlook and makes for a much more fulfilling end to the episode.
That's the story that I want to tell you. That's the story that I want us all to remember.
The final scene gives us space to take everything in, with the focus on Lydia. The music captures her loss so well, as she's just left everything behind to join this new community, and now the one person she really knew has died. But it still holds hope for the future, whatever it may be, as Daryl is there to have her back. He makes for an extremely bittersweet, yet satisfying ending, and promises that there are good things to come. The final episode of this season picks up a few weeks later and follows the characters journeying from the kingdom which has fallen apart. It's a long, rough trip, but this leads to my favourite scene and favourite piece of music from the whole series. The worst of the storm has passed, and the characters finally return home to a still, tranquil setting where they reunite with Judith and RJ. The kids start playing around and having a snowball fight, bringing everyone else into the fun. After seeing what each of these characters have lost throughout the season, a moment of pure joy and release is extremely well earned, and the music doesn't hold back, sitting at the forefront of the mix to make for an emotional and beautiful moment. Season 10 shifts even more into the use of recurring themes, introducing a number of new ones which will continue throughout the season, as well as continuing on with a few old themes. The score for the premiere in many ways feels like an overture for the whole season, introducing you to the majority of different leitmotifs to listen out for as the story goes on. It also continues the rustic, acoustic sound of Season 9, with a slightly more medieval twist brought about by the use of certain instruments that get introduced. The first half of the season sets a Cold War type scenario, with spies and threats of attack from an unpredictable enemy. We're given this mystery theme to portray the uncertainty of the characters as they find signs of the Whisperer's presence. There's also a new family theme introduced. It shares some similarities with the Michonne Judith motif heard in Season 9, but feels a little more developed and purposeful, and it definitely shows up a lot more. First of all, it follows Michonne for scenes with her and the kids, and this moment of thinking back to Rick. But later in the season, as Michonne leaves to find Rick, this theme appears under her farewell to Judith over the radio. At this point, the theme gets passed over to Judith to carry, and makes some very poignant appearances under her conversation with Daryl, as well as tying everything together for the big reunion towards the end. The other theme we get introduced to is one for Daryl and Carol. It only makes a few appearances under key moments between the two, most notably anytime the characters are talking about heading out on the road. So I'm hoping this might be the setup for some musical continuity, which will follow the duo as they eventually set out on their own into the spin-off show that's been announced. One more theme from Season 10 which lends itself well to being built upon next season is for Eugene and Stephanie. We hear it for almost every radio conversation they have once their bond starts growing, and even on a separate occasion when Eugene talks about her. Assuming the two characters get to meet, I really hope this theme makes a return and potentially grows, depending on how the characters' relationship develops. minor theme which recurs a few times was first heard in the Season 9 finale, as the Kingdom community leave their homes behind. In my interview with Sam Ewing, he shed some very interesting light on this track and part of the scoring process. This track wasn't intended to return after its first appearance, but when the reveal of Ezekiel's cancer was being edited, the editor picked it out as a temp track to cut the scene to. When the episode reached the composers, they realised that it fit really well thematically as well as setting the right tone, so they brought the melody back, reminding us of how much Ezekiel has lost up until this point. This track also brings us back to the time right after the Pikes incident, so it's effective not only for Ezekiel, but also for Carol and Lydia. With almost a year between air dates, this subtly reminds us of the significance of Carol and Lydia's interaction, and why Carol holds so much against Lydia. Similarly, the music from the Pikes scene makes a handful of comebacks in specific moments that relate to the incident. It's got an emotional tie to Sadiq when he speaks up about the PTSD and flashbacks he's been having ever since the event. And one of the strongest references comes when Carol gets revenge by putting Alpha's head on a pike. Moving into Michonne's final episode, we see her discover evidence that Rick is still alive before she leaves on a journey to find him. One callback occurs as she discovers Rick's boots on the sailboat. The track which played under her reaction right after the destruction of the bridge comes back as she realises what these clues could mean. I couldn't talk about this episode without mentioning arguably the most standout track from the season, which comes as Michonne is drugged and experiences a vision of what her story could have looked like had she made one key decision differently. We've never seen a sequence like this in the show, and the music doesn't hold back in providing a truly epic score played by a 4-piece string orchestra. While the sequence itself is already amazing, the music here brings it to a new height and sets it apart as a significant and memorable moment for the series. The episode ends with Michonne leaving to find Rick as we hear a rendition of the melody that was featured in the build-up to the bridge blowing up originally. This ties together these two moments of major characters leaving the show, both to continue their story at a later time. I mentioned earlier that the Whisperers theme gets some different branches to it this season. The first is what the composers refer to as the Radiohead version. It first appears in episode 2 to capture the heart of the Whisperers and their philosophy. It's got a tragic edge to it, but also a sense of purpose through the dark and twisted tone. This is brought back to punctuate Alpha's death in all its mixed emotions, which can't quite be summed up well in words, but is captured through the blend of tones in the score. It's given a more emotional, sentimental version, layered with a string instrument in episode 16 when Negan gives Lydia her mum's mask as she comes to terms with the loss and starts moving forward from it. It will come back more in the finale episode, which we'll cover in just a minute. The other branch out is a much more metal version which follows Beta, and later embodies the whole Whisperer horde as he takes control of it. It features a bass taking the percussive position with a layered flute and violin playing the main melody together to create a very unique sound for the character and the threat he poses. In the finale episode, this plays as the opener before morphing into a more hopeful and epic tune under Father Gabriel's monologue. The percussion never goes away as Beta's horde is still approaching, but adding other instruments and melodies on top allows it to build to a really epic height, while not losing the momentum and allowing it to transition back into the more intimidating theme. This also leads really nicely into the main title theme, launching us into the finale episode full of excitement and energy. These two branches of the Whisperer theme come to a climax for Beta's demise. First flaring as Beta gets triggered and charges for Negan. Before building up and into the Radiohead version as Beta's life flashes before his eyes, remembering Alpha and everything he's become through being a part of the Whisperer cult. It brings in a touch of flute, which we associate with Beta, for a more sentimental feeling this time around. You can also hear the hint of a crowd cheering, calling back to his past as a celebrity country singer. We pull out of the flashbacks to see Beta die, smiling while being engulfed by the crowd of walkers, and his recognisable instruments blend in with the Radiohead version of the Whisperer theme as it plays with a sense of conclusion and fulfilment, bringing a satisfying end to Beta's journey. This brings us to the musical climax of Season 10, which blends together a number of different themes. There's one exclusive to the final episode, which follows scenes between Carol and Lydia. This is one of my favourite uses of subtly building up a theme before bringing it to the forefront. It's extremely subtle to the point of being barely noticeable behind their first conversation. And then takes a little more of a front seat when Lydia picks up the backpack and joins Carol. This is enough to at least set it up in the back of our minds so that it doesn't come out of nowhere when we reach the climax. The emotional branch of the Whisperer theme establishes the tone for the scene as Carol leads the remnants of the Whisperer horde towards the edge of the cliff. This transitions into a melody we first heard as Carol attempted to take out the horde in the cave. It was only ever heard in reference to that moment, up until now, when she gets to finish what she started. As Carol is about to step over the edge, Lydia runs out and saves her, bringing in the Lydia Carol theme in full strength. The music here swells and builds to epic heights as the long build-up of emotions in these characters is cathartically released. Lydia throwing her mum's mask over the cliff to leave the Whisperers in this chapter of her life behind for good. Just as the Season 10 premiere introduced a handful of new themes, the finale brings fulfillment to at least 5 that I can name, and makes for a very satisfying experience, especially upon rewatch. And that brings us to the end of the Season 10 finale. I'm definitely going to be continuing this series when Season 11 airs, and I'll make sure to cover the Season 10 bonus episodes there as well. So looking back on the score as a whole, what makes it so special? I could spend all day analysing the different themes, textures, instruments and techniques that are used. They all have a massive part to play and have been executed really well throughout the series. But really, a score could have technical perfection, but still lack the most important element, which is an emotional connection. The Walking Dead score for me can fill me with joy, inspire me, or bring me to tears right from the first time I hear it up to the 500th time. It helps me to reflect on things, whether it's the themes that are explored in the show or the experiences I've been through while listening to the music. This show's been a part of my life for over 7 years now, and it's been with me through a whole lot of ups and downs, so it's been nothing short of amazing just to hear the music continue to get better and more powerful than even when I first fell in love with it. Looking at the score objectively just can't quite sum up what makes it so powerful. Some things can only be felt, and that's why we listen to music in the first place. So that's what this score means to me, and why it's by far my favourite score from any piece of media. You can feel the blood, sweat and tears that have gone into creating this music. From the extensive music department, including musicians, coordinators, music editors, assistants and many, many more. The editors who make a lot of the pacing and tone decisions for the show. The showrunners who carry the creative vision throughout the series. The additional music composers who contribute a lot to the score behind the scenes. Sam Ewing, who's brought a fresh new voice to the score in recent seasons and has written a lot of my favourite cues. And of course, Bear McCreary, the driving force behind over 10 years of music for the show, who brought his passion and mastery to the series right from the start and has never compromised on the high standards he set. Of course, I'm really excited to hear what the team puts together for season 11. It's going to be really epic no matter what it is, and I can't wait to experience it with all of you. Thank you so much for following this series. It's been really fun to put together, and the Walking Dead community continues to be an amazing family to be a part of, so thank you to everyone who makes it so great. I'd really appreciate it if you're able to share this series, and you can also follow my podcast, Just Keep Walking, if you'd like more content. Keep enjoying The Walking Dead, and thanks so much for watching.